and welcome to episode 17 of the Motivational Millennial Podcast. I just wanted to take a moment to share with you something cool I learned. I'm kind of a big coaching nerd, and I heard a new description of what coaching is. Coaching is professionally facilitated life change.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool and succinct and totally accurate. And if anyone is interested, we do have a much longer description available of coaching and what we offer on the website at motivationalmillennial.com/coaching. Today's guest is Dr. Todd Jenkins Jr., also known as Bowtie Todd. So if you are interested in how bow ties and leadership fit together, stay tuned. And please listen to the after show when Blake and I will share our biggest takeaways.
Let's do it.
Hello, welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our motivational millennial guest today is Dr. Todd Jenkins. He is the founder and CEO of Bowtie Leadership and Development, Inc., a leadership management and personal development firm with a focus in bringing diverse people together to increase individual or organizational productivity and performance. Also known as Dr. Bowtie Todd, he hosts weekly leadership Twitter conversations at Bowtie Convo, discussing everyday leadership issues for everyday people. With recent talks in Brazil, Japan, and Korea, Todd is known as someone who engages, unravels, and connects to service and love for all mankind. Thank you for being on the show today, Todd.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Blake and Abby, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you all.
Yeah, we're really excited. So will you take a moment to share a little bit about what you're up to and why you're passionate about it?
Thank you. Like I said, thank you guys for having me. It's just a great time to just be living. It's really a great time to be living. It's just like daily I'm waking up and just smelling passion. And I think when you operating in my zone of passion, it's really this whole feel of this people development. I really get energy from working with people, helping people, and just being around people. I mean, the world is so beautiful and diverse, and it really just kind of focus and scope me to what I love to do personally and professionally. And that's just going around leadership development, which is very broad, but it's so many pillars under leadership development that I have found my sweet spots. And so those are the things that ignite my passion, just being able to help people meet needs or just help organization meet needs in return by me meeting so many different type of people and type of organization cultures and development. It aids to my development as a young or a professional in this business. And so that is my passion. I'm really passionate about those items.
So will you share the story about the bow tie and also how you use that in your leadership development?
Yes, it's actually fascinating that I never thought that it would be the brand of my company and my stage name. The philosophy is really who I am as a person. I'm on and off the clock, but I'm always the bow tie person in my heart. And I'll tell you the reason why. What I have noticed as I guess I'm very intrigued by is conversations and how people choose to engage or disengage in conversations, especially about controversial issues or you having two participants from different backgrounds and wanting to talk about something that's just a little uneasy. And to bring it full circle, this how it sprung from when I'm walking on campus, working in higher education or actually walking in the park, wherever. I've always had bow ties or wearing a bow tie. It just doesn't get in the way when I'm eating my chicken. Or it's just, it's just something simple. It's the only creativity that I can kind of control as I start my day, as I select my bow tie. But taking it forward, as I go into public, people just from all different walks of life, from young to old to different genders, in the US and outside the US always comment about my bow tie. It's something simple. Hey, I like your bow tie. Oh man, that's a cool bow tie. Oh man, you're rocking the bow tie. That's fresh. And I get all of those opportunities. And knowing my background, they don't know the guy behind the bow tie. They don't know me, but they recognize something I have on and they have appreciated and they made a choice to engage with me. And so my response to them is a choice of how I want to engage. And so I can easily say, yeah, thank you. Oh, I get it all the time. Oh, yeah, my name's Todd. But I have a choice to say, wow, what if I say, hey, okay, thank you. What's your name? What's your story? Let me learn from you and let's engage. And I start seeing that as an opportunity that if we can start engaging in conversation as people do, as they have done to me with my bow tie, wow, we can really start learning from each other. So I took that whole entire approach and I made it into a model for my company and a model for my personal and professional philosophy. And the bow tie concept, I share with you guys, I came with the acronym. If you guys are interested, are you guys interested?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I don't like to talk if people are not interested.
That's why you're here, Todd. We're totally interested.
I am just kidding. But no, the bow tie is B, stands for this, and this happened in conversations. This model to be implemented. B is to be mentally and physically present. And so that's very, very important because so many people are distracted by thinking about what's the next thing to say. We're not actively listening to the person who's speaking to us, or we're not mentally and physically there, present. And that means a lot. So the first is be mentally and physically present. O, which is the next letter, is be open to new ideas. It's simple. It's straight to the point. You can't really learn with a closed mind. And just know if you be open, it's so many things that can really enrich your life when you're having a conversation. And then the next letter is W. Be willing to share your own experience. So many people come in and listen to the opposite, but they don't tell their story. They don't interject their points or being able to share their experience because everyone is uniquely and valuable to any conversation, whether you agree or disagree. But just because they have a presence there, I think is just rich if you think about it. So BOW. And the hardest thing, have you guys ever tied a bow tie or wear bow ties?
Very rarely.
Very rarely. Okay. Blake or Avery, have you tied a bow tie before?
Mm-mm.
I don't think I've ever successfully tied one.
Okay,
I resorted to the clip-on.
Okay, got you. Okay, so it goes to that point. The hardest thing when tying a bow tie is making the knot in the middle. And that is usually the hardest thing in conversations. And that's my last portion is TIE. How can you tie it together? How can you really learn from each other and move yourself from good to great based on right now conversation, whether you agree or disagree? And it's just a simple concept of it's challenging. It's the challenging part of what people do on a one-on-one conversation, what they do in presentations, what they do at work, what they do in their personal life, their fitness life. You can come and you can listen, you can share, but what are you really walking away with? What is your take home? And so that's the bow tie concept. It's the bow tie philosophy that I try to practice on and off the clock. And that's what I built my whole entire company around as that bow tie concept. And that's our bow tie model that we use.
Well, Todd, I feel like if more people followed the bow tie communication model, we would have a much healthier public and political discourse at the moment. So as you're listening to that, I'm like, I feel like all children and adults need to learn that. It's true. And I had to learn, especially the W lesson about the willingness to share. I used to only ask questions all the time because I thought it was a way to share that I cared about people. And one day I had a big blowout with a friend who thought I was just interrogating her all the time. And I was so mad because she never asked me any questions about myself. And what we realized was that she thought the way you communicate and express yourself was trading stories. And I thought the way you communicate was by asking questions. And so what I realized in that moment was it needs to be a bit of both.
Exactly, right? And I mean, it's so simple. That's why I don't mind like sharing it with people because it's a simple concept. yet it's very challenging. And it's just like the bow tie. The bow tie is very simple once you learn to tie it. It's, it becomes a practice. I can tie it on my way, way to work without a mirror. And when you get to practicing having these communication, it takes practice, just like learning to tie the bow tie. Man, when it is tied together, it gets presence known. That's another level of elegance. And that's kind of what I try to teach my clients, is that when you can really practice and master these communication skills, it would take your life to another level of elegance and just another platform. So the return of investment will just be so great, just learning these simple models. And I do agree with you. And this is something that a lot of employees or people around the world struggle with, how to have difficult conversations and how to tie it together.
I just love it because it's so simple and the imagery is there and you're able to continue the metaphor, and it helps to really convey the importance.
Great.
So Todd, could you tell us about a defining moment that helped you realize this sense of purpose, this love of leadership development and communication?
Yes, no, that's a really good question. For me, I feel like, my background of how I was raised and been raised by my mother and been raised from a low-income community, I've learned how to navigate different systems, and I learned how to make the most out of the system that I was in and not allow what I saw in front of me to be what I see ahead of me. I kind of noticed as I reflect through a lot of my childhood readings or writing that my grandmother would share with me, is that I always had a purpose to speak or give back to people. I always was an influencer, put it that way. And so I started noticing how much of an influencer I was when I was, in school with different organizations and in my church. And I started seeing that people did listen to me, young and old. And it clicked for me that, okay, if these people are going to listen to me, I really do need to try to say something encouraging or something that's going to be impact, because I remember that moment. I'm like, wow, I actually started to realize people do follow me. They really believe in what I do and my relationships with them. It's valid. And so I really started learning that. But I would say that as I came to refine my scope, it did take some time for me to understand what is my purpose. And I know my purpose here is to give back to what's been given to me, to turn it back tenfold. I'm a believer of servant leadership. But I think as far as this professional moment is, I was actually invited to be a speaker at Walmart. This was some years ago. And it was so interesting because the first call I got, I thought it was actually this coming to volunteer, to be honest, because it was like a summit for men and things like that. And I was like, they're just calling me to help, this planet and to show up and be a volunteer. But they was actually calling me to be a speaker. They sent me a contract. And I was like, okay, this is more than a speed. They was like, what type of water will you like? And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not doing the Walmart run to Sam's or something like that. I was actually doing. So that was fascinating for me. And I was like, wow, I didn't know a price range. I didn't know how to quote myself, and I didn't know that I was a brand. That was the thing that I was like, let me explore this, because I'm so humble and I'm grateful for what God has provided for me as a platform, that, I feel like I can't put price on things, because it's people, it's influence, and it's up to you to take it or leave it. And I may not do you well. I'm not sure. But that moment, I remember thinking and talking to my now about to be my wife, but I remember talking to her and like, baby, guess what? They want to pay me. And I was like, and it was like, wow. And I had a connection with some other CEOs who I met, who was very wealthy CEOs and their business owners. It was DeTavio Samuels, actually. He's out of New York, a good friend of mine. And he shared his business model. And I remember he gave me that piece of advice and say, hey, if you're going to do something, 'cause I was like, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. He was like, don't limit yourself and don't put yourself in a box. And so that's why I am a jack of all trades and I can do so many different things. But that was the moment, I would say, to be honest, that I can really remember and say it refined my scope and really set me up to walk in what I am considering my destiny or my legacy that I'm creating.
Wow, that's such a beautiful moment to have all of that come together, where you realized that you were a natural leader and that it was important for you to have a positive message. And then later on in your journey, there comes this moment where you're given a great opportunity and gift to share your message and get paid for it. And then it's like, whoa, what's possible for you? That's amazing. So since you started on this path and had that moment, what has been the biggest challenge that you faced and how did you overcome it?
Now, that's another good question. The biggest challenge for me, it grew really fast. I started reading a lot of books. I am not a businessman. I just never saw myself as a businessman, even though my dad's side of the family is a lot of entrepreneurs. So I guess I'm getting that. I got that little bug now. But, just the whole plan of making sure this is set up as a business and the investment piece was a little bit challenging because I had my hand in so much. I was working full time. I was doing a lot of volunteer work. And then this company just kind of blossomed. And then it went by fast. Like there was so many people calling saying, hey, can we have you here? Can you guys do this? So those was challenging, trying to balance everything and prioritize. I really had to center myself and I had to vision and I had to strategically plan to see where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 5 months? And silent a lot of the voices because being in the business, as you guys know, of any entrepreneurship, it's like working a muscle. You have to go into the gym every day and work out. And if you don't, you'll never get better. No one's going to see your physique if you don't stay in that gym. But it's just not just staying in the gym. You got to go out and eat the right things. You got to prepare for the sleep. And that's a business. And you have to have that routine planned out. And so for me, that was a challenge because, comparing it to the gym, I was skipping gym. I was not eating right and things like that. I had to center myself. And I would say that helped me refocus and having sound mentors and the sounding cabinet to help guide me and lead me to where I want to go. But that was a challenging area. That was one of the biggest challenges. Once you have this great passion, you got to also put a great outline and strategic vision and planning and a process of models to it, that application piece and that business piece. So it's good to have a great cabinet of different experts, that you can go into the kitchen and grab at any time. And so I'm blessed that I was able to identify some people like that.
That's wonderful. I'd love to go back to your gym metaphor just briefly. I'm wondering, I want to get an explanation of what in your mind is examples of eating right and examples of getting into the gym in terms of something that you need to go and do every single day. I'd love specific examples of what that looks like to you.
For entrepreneurship?
For entrepreneurship, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I would tell you, I am definitely not the best fitness coach in this metaphor. But I will definitely give you what I have been able to trial and error, and I am still working on my regimen. So bear with me. But I do think it's some important things, some important steps preparing for your entrepreneurship fitness. First thing is that it's a mental thing, a mental constraint. You have to wake up and know that you want to try harder than the day before. That's very important. Time you wake up, you are waking up with a purpose. You're waking up and saying, smelling fresh air, thank God I'm here. I am about to go out and make the day better. And it's easy said than done. Some people need to actually put a sign over their bed and say, wake up, I'm going to be great today.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to forget because we get so distracted. So number one, I would say definitely having a mindset to achieve whatever your goals are daily or long term or however. So that's number one. Number two is just as it is set, you having goals. Now you actually have to go out there and implement and try to achieve those objectives. And so you have to set your day up to, whether you're planning and having a balance of, okay, I'm going to read one book, read a couple articles based on your industry. I'm going to do that in the morning. I may hear a podcast, listen to you guys, shout out to millennials, because you need some positive energy and you need to be fed. I feel like that can be equivalency to your eating habits, making sure that you go out and read, try new things, go out and experience new cultures, and also have mentorship. All of that stuff is nutritions to your body to help you really become a better entrepreneur. And then when you actually get into the gym, your office space or your planning book or the computer, that's when you really go, as I would say, go hard. You have to really try more reps, keep pushing until at times you get fatigued, and that's okay. But if you never keep pushing daily, you never get stronger till you fatigue. The equivalency of the metaphor in the gym. Like I say, I really think that's the office space piece that you're going in. Maybe you're looking, crunching some numbers, or you're working on your craft or your skill set and producing results, because you got to measure those results. You track that. And then just as you're working out, you got to take some resting periods as well and use those times to really enjoy life. Go out there and take a walk. Go smell the trees or something. I mean, really, these are things that we don't do as entrepreneurs because we're chasing the dollar and not chasing life moments to be impactful among ourselves and others. And I think if you kind of live this type of practice, equivalent to the gym metaphor, I really think it can help you improve your process over time. And this is really also having a coach, having someone to motivate you, or having things in your life that motivate you to get up every day and do it all over again and get better. But make sure you take your rest days and your rest moments, because you don't want to overwork and dang, you just be a workaholic, just beefed out for no reason. But it's good to be toned and look good. So just remember that.
Well, I like the long-term sustainability focus of the way you've described the metaphor as well, that it's a life practice for living a fulfilling, healthy, happy life. It's not, like you said, that you are necessarily trying to compete in a bodybuilding competition. Although if you want to do that for certain periods of your life, that's great. I mean, nothing against that. But it's knowing that is what you're consciously deciding to do versus falling into unhealthy or unsustainable patterns of, going too hard, injuring yourself in literal or metaphorical ways, or getting sick. So that's a great metaphor. I love that. Thank you for elaborating on that.
Yeah, I thought you were a great fitness coach.
So, Todd, what advice, in addition to that beautiful image, would you give to other millennials who are on this journey towards fulfillment and success?
I would tell you that, first of all, we are a blessed generation. We have a world of opportunity. And this is beautiful. It is beautiful to be alive. It is beautiful to be a millennial in today's time. And I would tell you that I can't generalize because that's just not the best thing to do, but it is some statistics out there to talk about our trends and things that have happened in our time span. Some of the advice that come to mind are a couple of points, or several points I will mention. The first thing is I really feel like we are go-getters and we are aggressive at it. However, I would say we need to learn to be aggressive in learning how to take our time, be patient, and enjoy life moments. Take a breath at time and realize that you have life, it's just those little things. I feel like as a generation, we don't do that as well. We take a lot of trying to work hard, trying to get the dollar, trying to get the status, and trying to make it. But I would say my first advice is be aggressive in learning how to take your time. Second, what I've learned is learn to say no and to give your best yes. Learn to say no and give your best yes. Don't overcommit. And it is, especially when you're so passionate and especially if you're in the people business, everybody want, you to be on this board or you come to this event and, just don't overextend yourself. And so learning how to say no and give your best yes, give back as you go in service and philanthropy. It is very, very important as you climb the ranks, or if you don't consider yourself climbing ranks, you are climbing the ranks because you are thinking about climbing the ranks. You're already ahead of the game than someone else on this earth. And so it is very important for you to give back to your community, mentor someone, have a mentor. We have this thing called the high chair impact. And that's, I need to be feeding someone else in that high chair. So when it's time for me to leave out that door, they're going to step out and walk the walk as well and do it better than I did. I do truly believe in that. Let's see, I would say have a sense of spiritual balance in personal life. I will definitely give the advice of that. Don't allow work and your craft to take the joy of your spiritual balance, or however that may look, and having a personal life. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself to what you see in front of you. Travel, experience new cultures, challenge yourself to understand, to be understood. And it's very, very important to do those things. And the cool thing about the area that we live in now is that you don't really even have to go to South Africa to experience South Africa. It can really come to your home by TV or go to a local event in your community by experience a new cultural dance. You know, those things I have seen in my experience that have made me a better person and able to relate and holistically impact different industries and be cross-functionals. So I know I kind of gave you guys like the thoughts that really came to my head. Those are the advice that I have learned and I'm still practicing myself as a millennial.
That's awesome. I love the connections between doing things that help you grow and expand as a person and doing things that help you engage more with your community. And I thought you just gave a great wide range of advice.
In the gym metaphor, you talked earlier about the importance of setting up your day right. And so would you share with us some of the things that you do in your morning routine that you know is going to set you up for a great day?
Oh, yes, sure. And don't laugh. And, you know, I'm letting out my little secrets.
Thank you.
But no, I would tell you, Abby and Blake, is that when I wake up in the morning, my alarm is usually set around 5:30 a.m., starting my morning off. And my attempt in the best theory and try to put in the best practice is I usually get up, I have a song, and I go work out, go for a run, try to do some type of physical activity. I'm always listening to music, either inspirational music. I love my gospel music or, you know, neo soul music. I go to sleep with that on and I kind of wake up with that on. It's kind of interesting. That starts my day off. And then, of course, I do maybe a couple readings. I pray before I start my day, do some type of reflection activity. And then I start the course of my day. And that's usually ran by, you know, meetings, calls, or however it is on the agenda. I mean, that's how I really get that 2 or 3 hours in the morning, really 2 hours to jumpstart my day. That's my energy. Of course, get some breakfast in there as well. And I wake up, once my bow tie is on, it's a smile on my face. I'm not going to lie to you. Once I walk out that door, it is like, go and see what God has for you today. That's exactly how I really wake up. Like, I'm so just thankful. Like, oh, wow, I'm here. I'm breathing. God, let me see another day. Let me go take advantage of it and just do whatever I can. And most days, I do have those days where I'm like, wow, I'm tired from Sunday night and I need to push through. So I'm not going to say every day is, I'm in my top 10% of greatness, but I would say bulk of my days, I try to have the balance and I have an expectation that I will try to seize the day the best as I can.
I really appreciate that you value so much giving yourself this time, as you mentioned, on an ideal day, that you are willing to build in extra time by getting up quite early, 5:30 a.m. Does the feeling of gratitude help you get up in the wee hours? Because I always need help with that.
I know, that's a good point, right? Not only does gratitude, that's a portion of it, but I just know if I don't get up at that time, it's going to throw the rest. I don't have enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
And so to do what I need to do, like I say, with all those things that I mentioned earlier that you must balance, it takes a lot of time, especially dealing with people. It takes a lot of time. And so for me, it's just that commitment that if I wake up at 6:30 or I'm like, I feel bad that I missed a workout, or I'm rushing to get out the house and I'm rushing to get breakfast. And so those little things that really push me to get up early and try my best and make that routine. I'm really big into a lot of routines and trying to keep that healthy practice.
Todd, could you share a motivational quote or book that has really impacted you or changed your life?
Wow. I've read several books and listened to authors and speakers. But one of the things that always come to my mind that I like to share with others that has inspired me to kind of do what I do is the quote by St. Augustine. And he says something around the lines of, "A world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page." And I kind of equate that to what I do in my work. And I feel like the world is a book, and those who do not seek out of their comfort zone to have conversation only read one page. And I really feel like that has inspired me to continue to do the work that I do in my personal and professional career. And, this is something I think, just be great and be a gift to the world. Like that's what I really love. I love that piece too. Like, just be great and be a gift to the world. It's not in correlation to the conversation, but I think it's correlation to what I said earlier about service and leading in your community.
I love that image of conversation as travel, in the same way that reading a book is like an imaginary journey. Having a conversation with another person is like exploring new worlds. And you obviously talked about that earlier with the openness, I believe, the O in the bow tie. Right. But it's such a great way to think about getting to understand new perspectives. And even like you mentioned, you don't have to go to South Africa to experience South Africa in your own town or through media. And I think similarly, the idea of traveling through conversation is really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you.
Todd, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and talking with us today. Could you share with the audience how they could find out more about you or your work?
Yes, thank you. It's going to be no secret about these hashtags and names and that I'm about to give you, but Bowtie Todd is for like everything. BOWTIETODD. I am on Twitter at Bowtie Todd. I am on Instagram at Dr. Bowtie Todd. You can catch me on Facebook. I have a page, Bowtie Todd Jenkins. And of course, check out our Twitter conversations that we pick up back in the fall at Bowtie Convo, COVO. But I do have a web page that people can visit about services, www.bowtieleadership.com. But even if you don't need any services, you just want to connect or you just want to tell me about your reflections or thoughts, I would love to connect with you. And so please connect me with any of the social media outlets or by email, bowtietoddspeaks@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd, for being here with us and sharing all of your awesome wisdom and all of your stories and perspectives on bow ties. I'm never going to look at bow ties the same way again.
Thank you guys for having me. I really, really appreciate it. This is awesome work that you guys are doing. And so I appreciate you guys allowing us to bow tie the conversation together today.
Ooh, I like what you did there. Thank you. The Motivational Millennial Podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Consulting Services. We work with organizations and teams to develop millennial leaders by understanding and tapping into millennial skills and values. In short, we strive to enrich organizations one millennial at a time. To learn more about our customized offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com/consulting.
Hello, and welcome to the after show for our conversation with Bowtie Todd. I forgot to mention in the intro that I met Todd at the University of Arkansas when we were both pursuing graduate degrees in higher education there. And so that's where we met. He was really cool, and I've just kept up with him and been excited to see his journey and so excited for him to come and share everything that he's doing. It's amazing what people do with their lives, which is why I love the work we're doing. Anyway, that's an aside. For me, the thing that Todd said that really spoke to me and jumped out was when he was talking about smelling the trees. Like, that was so funny because usually people say, stop and smell the flowers. And he says, smell the trees. And I totally relate to that because I love smelling the trees and I love the forest and I love the imagery of that. And he goes on to say that most entrepreneurs are busy chasing the dollar and not chasing life moments. And I felt like that was really profound because the idea of life moments, what he didn't say was chasing the dream life. Mm-hmm. He was talking about moments of life that, for me, when I imagine that, it's about the fact that life really is made up of a series of moments. And that sounds really trite, but it's so true. Because when we practice mindfulness and presence, we recognize that there is no other moment than this one, and this one, and this one. And when we take a break like he was suggesting, or take time to give ourselves the gift of whatever fun, awesome, relaxing thing that we like to do, or people that we like to spend time with, we are interjecting moments into our lives that can be, if we're being present with them, fulfilling and uplifting and full of joy and awesomeness. And that's really what it's about.
And so often we see that in the retrospective. Think about what you remember from kindergarten. If you remember anything from kindergarten, I'm guessing it's probably a couple key moments or a couple key impressions of people or events, but you certainly don't remember every single assignment or paper or whatever you did in kindergarten.
CAT.
That's right, exactly. You sort of absorbed it. I think the same thing can be true sometimes at a job where if you're just, to his point, on the grind day after day after day after day, you look back on it and it's all kind of a blur, except for maybe a few key moments, maybe some big highs, maybe some deep lows.
Yeah.
And so what I like about the point that he made and that you really nicely articulated is if you think, okay, how am I going to be looking back at my life when I'm 70 years old or hopefully even 90 years old?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to remember those moments. And of course, we all have to do things. We got to go grocery shopping. You got to pay the bills. There are all these daily activities. But if we're not conscious of creating those life moments, we can spend years without really having anything that we're taking away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think of life moments, sometimes it's legitimately on a hike smelling trees. But sometimes it's way back in the day. I can remember being 5 and cuddling with my mom, or, hanging out with my best friends making, what were they? They weren't even VHS. They were in between that and digital. But point being, remember the tapes, the small tapes that we had to make? That's a real thing.
8mm?
8mm tapes. Back in the day, man, my teenager friends, we would just make these crazy videos. And even though I don't really remember any other crazy stuff, it's true. It's those moments of bonding or moments of connection or moments of really appreciating what's beautiful about life that stick out to me. When he says chasing life moments, those are the things that pop up.
I love you sharing about the tapes that your friends made. Because I also, in middle school and early high school, made some ridiculous sketch comedy videos with my friends, which were all probably borderline illegal in retrospect.
My imagination went going, but anyway, continue.
Only because we were trespassing on other people's property to do pretend race car driving announcers.
You're not supposed to be admitting this.
Okay, well...
No, I'm
what can
teasing.
I say? I am
teasing.
such a rebel.
You are. Okay.
That's
sorry.
right. My early tapes. Man. But to your point, it's great to be able to look back on those kind of things and have some physical, tangible thing, even if it no longer exists. You might have lost the tapes. Mine all melted in the great candy melt of 2012 when all of our home videos apparently fell victim to some sticky candy bar that was left in the... I still don't know how that happened. I'm thinking maybe some of my parents' friends had kids who were visiting, decided to stash all their candy in our video camera case. It makes zero sense how all these things got filled with taffy. Anyway, that's a really random story.
It actually just got thrown away and was like, how do we explain what happened to these videos? There was a candy melting.
They could have just said they melted, which makes me think it actually happened.
Okay, because it was so crazy.
Yeah, it's just so absurd. Anyway, all that to say,
we're totally rambling, but yeah, no, that's a great point, and I just thought that another way of looking at this, which is really cool. So you mentioned creating something tangible, but I also think there's a perspective that I am a huge proponent of mindfulness. So I will say there is a perspective that if we are mindful, which means being fully present and non-judgmental of what's happening, there is a huge peace and appreciation that comes from every single moment. Every single moment. You could literally create quote-unquote life moments like the kind I was describing that make me feel connected and have all this beauty if you practice allowing that to happen in any moment, even on the train or walking the dog or whatever, because what you're doing is getting yourself in a practice of your life being filled with moments that you're enjoying because you're enjoying all of them, because you're being present, if that makes sense. And it doesn't have to be one like extravagant thing. That one extravagant thing could be so amazing. And when you're in it, as long as you're allowing yourself to enjoy it and not like we so often do is like we get really excited about a vacation that we have planned. And we're like, oh my God, I can't wait till it's here. There's 10 days left, 7 days left, 5 days left. Now I'm on vacation. And then it's like, oh, I'm on vacation. Like, oh, I wonder what I'm missing out at work. I wonder what my friends are doing, you know, and you're not allowing yourself to actually enjoy that moment that you created. So there's kind of this other way of looking at it where we don't have to necessarily chase the life moments, but we could just realize that each moment is a moment of life and appreciate it.
Yeah, there's the consciousness that comes from choosing to say, this is a moment. I think of landing in New York at LaGuardia and flying over Manhattan and just really saying to myself consciously, this is a moment I want to remember. And I do. To this day. I've taken so many flights in and out of New York, but that specific one, because I was consciously deciding to make it a moment, really resonated. And that actually connects to the thing I wanted to talk about that I love what Todd said about intentionality in communication. So his whole idea about bow tie, the acronym, is when you are engaging in communication with someone, you can approach it from a conscious perspective. Yeah. You have a certain intention that you have set that, you know, I want to be open and I want to share some of my own story in this and be present, you know, and tie it all together. And tie it all together. I said it out of order, but I actually had a similar acronym that I was working on for a while called Remix, which is a similar idea. It was focus on the relationship, build empathy with the person, be conscious of the message that you're trying to convey, both with your words and your body language. I was for ask their input, and the X was for execute. And it was more around business communication, which is why execute is even in there. You wouldn't necessarily think of that as much for interpersonal communication. But it's that if you're going to have a conversation, go into it with an intention to focus on building the relationship, getting buy-in, and then creating some kind of mutually agreed upon deliverable. All that to say, I think going into conversations not in reaction mode, where we might feel really charged and ready to just go off. If they say one wrong thing, if, you know, or I need to really get this off my chest. If we go into an interaction like that, we're not going to be listening or present necessarily, or any of those things that Todd talked about.
It's interesting because I feel like in the instances you're describing, when you're like, I really need to get something off my chest, or I think of conflict resolution, you know, something that you're really frustrated about, it feels like you're protecting yourself and giving yourself some kind of weapon or way to guard yourself by feeling that way, by coming in and saying, I'm just going to be really aggressive, because it helps you feel protected. Mm-hmm. And coming in with intentionality and presence and all of that can be vulnerable. But I also am thinking of both yours and Todd's acronym examples. Those are kind of like really cool ways that you can sort of arm yourself in like a really healthy way going into conversations with a perspective and tools that can help you navigate it and help you navigate the vulnerability that's inevitable to come up in those types of situations.
Right. And it is about giving you a sense of security and a framework to allow you to be present while simultaneously getting the outcomes that you want. And I think that's the interesting part about it, because you might think, oh, you're going to go into this conversation, well, you're already trying to script how it's going to go, or how can you be present? It's actually the opposite. It's because you have clarity on what you would like this conversation to achieve, then you can be present in the moment about supporting the other person, learning more about them, sharing parts of yourself, And it comes from a grounded place where you are able to make the most out of that conversation and whatever that means to you. Maybe you're making the most out of sharing time with this person. And so it's not so outcome driven that there's like a business result that you need from this conversation, although there could be in a professional context, but more that I want this to be perhaps a life moment. As you were saying before, I believe that every conversation can have depth and meaning and connection and can build with the person you're talking to if we come into it with that intention.
This was reminding me of a couple other things, which is one, nonviolent communication / compassionate communication, I think is another way it's spoken of, which is really cool and talks about highlighting needs and comes into understanding other people's perspectives. And it also reminds me of a personal example. I feel like one of the first mature decisions and shifts that I made in a romantic partnership was coming from the realization that when I went into conversations with that person angry or frustrated or with a chip on my shoulder, which may have had good reason to be there. That's not to discount what needed to be discussed. But what would happen is I would come into the situation and it would be so emotionally charged that I would forget the real point of what I was talking about. One is oftentimes whatever someone does, they forget to, buy you a birthday present. Okay? It's not about not having the present. So you could come into that situation because you're really mad and you don't have the present and you're like, how could you forget this? I need this present. That's not really what it's about. So the first thing I did was, when I was angry, really understand what was at the core of what was hurting me from that decision or lack of consideration. And so, for example, the real pain was coming from not feeling acknowledged and cared about, not about the present itself, right? So it's like getting to the root of what the real problem was, and then I would write it down, and then 2 or 3 bullet points. It was like a presentation, but it was because I didn't want it to get emotionally charged, like we're talking about, and then, bring in all this other stuff from the past or from the future that's completely irrelevant and can't make any headway. And once I started doing that, oh my gosh, the conversations were completely different and the dynamic shifted a lot. And although I'm not still with that partner anymore, it's something that I found just giving myself that space and coming into the conversations with that orientation of working together rather than it being just about me being mad, totally effective.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of the book Crucial Conversations that talks about how one of the most helpful things that we can do, especially when conversations are charged, is to establish a baseline of safety, because people have a hard time listening when they're feeling defensive or angry. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of about a lot of de-escalation or clarifying. Mm-hmm. To your point, this is not that you are a bad person because you forgot a birthday present. It's, I value being considered or thought about. And in this instance, that was not done. So there's a way to say it that doesn't make the other person bad or wrong. It's talking about the behavior, the action. And that's hard to do when we're feeling upset sometimes. But I like what you said about writing it out. In part because that just helps it be more clear to you in the first place. You might be feeling, like you said, the resentments of the past and also stress about work or all these your family, all these other things that are coming in. And so I think writing it down can kind of parse out some of those other pieces and say what's really at the heart of this. So I like that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for bringing up that point so we can kind of talk about it. I really appreciate it. And thank you all so much for listening today. We'll be back again next week. See you then.
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis.
Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!